Well, hold up, man. Don't we got a political perspective?
Absolutely. I'm
We,
sure.
in your political perspective, can you also speak on the local politics with DC 33 and the mayor, Philadelphia, and the trash? Like the city stink, right?
Well, all right, we can actually start there. So, in Philadelphia, that's where me and B is at. There is a
Be in
city
the county, man. I don't think you
Oh,
there,
sorry.
Reggie.
Oh, okay. I mean, that background definitely looks county-ish. That fireplace and then that library in the background, definitely B is killing it. But yeah. So city workers are on strike, which hasn't happened in the city of Philadelphia since the early '80s, and some of the services that have been interrupted, and probably the one that affects the quality of life in the city is the sanitation workers on strike. And I'll probably talk a little bit about this, like some of the details of what they're requesting. However, um, you can just imagine how not having trash pickup services is affecting this city that already has its issues with litter and with people putting their trash out without trash cans. Um, so one of the things that the city kind of put in place was these these dump sites where city residents can actually dump their garbage in these dump sites based on the location that you are in the city. There's a few of them where you can take your trash if you need to dump your trash. What is interesting about this whole kind of a trash situation is someone attempted to dump trash on the mayor's in front of the mayor's home. Um, and that person was met obviously with security and law enforcement, and that person was dragged to the ground and arrested, which was actually a pretty ridiculous and stupid thing, to do, to try to drop off trash at the mayor's house. Uh, obviously, you should have known that she had security and police and all of that. She got arrested for just being an asshole, but it kind of gives you an idea of just how people are carrying this part of the strike. It looks like the two sides are not even really close. They have some benefits issues that they're trying to work out, but the most important or the most serious kind of topic is wage increases, and the city workers are looking for eight somewhere in the realm of like an 8% raise increase every year for the next 4 years, and the city is nowhere near that. The city is only, as of right now, offering somewhere in the 7.5% for the duration of the contract. So they appear to be kind of miles apart when it comes to what they're looking for in the terms of wages. What's also kind of interesting is the mayor has recently given raises to her staff and actually herself. And these raises were approved through city council, so it's not like the mayor just unilaterally can even give raises. However, those raises for some of her staff, including herself, have been, in some instances, astronomical, like somewhere over 30%. But for her staff, her actual direct report staff, they're all in the range of around 9%. So it becomes like kind of like increasingly like problematic, but also, if you can give yourself and your staff a 9% raise, now city workers are like, well, we need something equivalent. So, that is another factor, is that the city did give raises to a particular group, but this particular group, it looks like the city does not feel like they have the money. Now, I will say two things about this whole process is very interesting to me is There has been contract negotiations with every mayor, not every mayor, but at least 3 mayors in the last 20 or so years, and no city workers have decided to go on strike, and, and their demands were not met with these previous mayors, and why they are, just really kind of adamant and playing hardball. There is some, conversation about it being kind of purposefully done just because she is the first Black female mayor, and that they are trying to almost kind of force the city's hand. Now, some folks may ask, like, well, what is wrong with giving out these raises? And the problem comes in that cities just do not have money. Like, most cities are actually broke. Cities don't really have the ability to collect revenue at a high clip. There's only a few things that the city can do in terms of taxes, in terms of property taxes, that can actually generate revenue. Cities are not in the business of real estate. They're not in the business of owning companies. Like, governments can't own like companies. They can't own industry. So most cities, and you see it throughout the country, most cities are struggling with their budgets because they don't have a big or large way to be able to generate revenue in a city. But also, the city loses so much revenue by attempting to draw in businesses and companies into the city. So one thing you'll see a lot is tax abatements, where I will, try to persuade these companies to build in the city and to put their offices in the city, and in an effort to bring them in, the city will cut their taxes. So it's a double-edged sword. And also, another big factor in city budgets are retirement payments. The city is paying millions of dollars in retirement benefits for people who do not work for the city anymore. And this is just from years of, back in the day, kind of sweetheart retirement plans that cities don't even do anymore. Most companies don't do retirement plans. They'll do 401ks, they'll do IRAs, but nobody's doing pensions, because when those pensions have to be paid out, and some of these pensions are paid out not just to the former employee, but to their spouse and family. So we're talking about having hundreds and hundreds, and depending on the size of the city, thousands of people that are still on the payroll. And they have to pay they have to pay these people. So that's a big portion of their budget, right? So I'm saying all that to say, I don't know how this is going to end. I do think that city workers are doing what they need to do in order to get their wages. It's unfortunate because we have the 4th of July tomorrow, and us being the birthplace of American independence, we're gonna have all kinds of people just in your personal kind of interactions, having cookouts, having different events. But then,
That's
like, the
a
major,
great point. I didn't even think about how this affects tomorrow, or the 4th of July, rather.
Right. And then you got the major events in the city that is going to produce trash. I mean, and even in terms of like the security, when you have these big events, one of the things that law enforcement does is they use sanitation trucks to be able to block streets, so people don't just bulldoze down the street and run a bunch of people over. So they put the sanitation trucks in the middle of cross streets, because you can't really go around a trash truck, right? But if it's a cone there, I'll go around the cone. So not even having the ability to even move these sanitation trucks into areas to secure where the people is going to be at. I mean, all of these things are factors. So I don't know how this is going to end, but I just think it's just interesting that we are just in a broke city. we're in a broke city. And I don't really, I think the way that this ends, if you're asking me, I think that the union eventually just caves in. and negotiates a deal somewhere in the middle. I think that even with something like trash collection, I think the longer it goes on, the more people are just going to adapt. And I think when we see other strikes, like we've all been a part of the SEPTA strikes and stuff like that, that it's like the initial hit is like, oh my God. And then it ends up being, well, we got to make it work. And I remember, I think years ago, the SEPTA was on strike for like a couple of months. And, by the time it was over, it was like, really, who needs SEPTA? So I think people will adapt and after this initial wave, but I am interested to see what the city is going to look like after the 4th of July.
I don't know, bro. Do you think they could adapt? You think the city can adapt to not having trash picked up? I think it's going to get ugly. I think people are going to eventually just drive to different counties to drop off their trash.
Yeah, I mean, and even at my hospital, I had to put my staff on notice to make sure that people aren't dumping trash in our trash compactor. Because we can't house the trash of the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And people are going to go and find a dumpster, especially like those. There's usually dumpsters in commercial areas, supermarkets, hospitals. There normally dumpsters there, and people are going to be like,
my shit in your John, Reggie. Fuck that.
Damn, yeah, pause with the dumpster, bro. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's hard.
Dumping my shit in your Jones.
Yeah, man. Now, the last thing I want to talk about real quick is the big, beautiful bill, or if you are anybody that's going to be negatively affected by it, is the big, ugly bill. It just got passed by Congress, the Senate, and Trump is most likely going to be signing this bill into law tomorrow. Trump always got to do something for the TV, right? So Independence
By 5
Day.
o'clock, right? So I'm sorry not to cut you, but I saw this just recently and it was insane. So I got a couple. I'm going to have questions all through this talk of the big beautiful bill. But yeah, I did see. Yes, he's going to sign it into law tomorrow and have what was the planes, B-2s and F-22s flying over the White House as he signs the bill, right?
Yes, absolutely ridiculous.
God.
Absolutely ridiculous. But what's funny is, the Republicans a lot of times talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, right? And flying bombers over the White House. And those trips are in the millions. Like it's not a $10 trip, right?
Right.
Like, those
$10 gas jets, money ain't gonna get it done.
Those jets are taking like 40,000 gallons of fuel. Like, it's not something that's just like a cheap, easy thing to do. The scramble fighter jets. But obviously Trump is proud of this accomplishment, and he's always going to do anything for the scene, for the show. But some of the highlights of the bill, or lowlights of the bill, is going to increase our federal deficit to $3.3 trillion. What that means is that this is what the United States owes to different stakeholders in the world. And the more we owe, the more likely it is that countries can actually call in this debt and essentially take pieces of the country. So and the national debt doesn't really affect individuals. Go ahead, B.
I have a question, because this is one of the things that I struggle with understanding.
Yeah.
I hear a lot about the debt. And my thing that I keep coming back to is, who gives a fuck about the debt? Like, why do we care about the debt? What is the ramifications of the United States being in debt and creating more debt? Who gonna check me?
Yeah. So what the debt does affect, it affects things like interest rates. Like, that's the biggest thing that can affect the common person, right? So based on the national debt, it's in conjunction with the department that actually sets the interest rate numbers. So higher national debt equals higher interest rates, And that is really kind of like the biggest thing that can like really affect like the average person. So as the debt skyrockets, interest rates goes up. But conversely, if the debt is reduced, then the feds can actually reduce interest rates, which has happened also. So that's really the biggest thing. I mean, things like tax cuts. So in order to make certain, in order to get certain tax cuts for certain people, it can actually affect the debt. So the higher the debt, you want to try to get more tax revenue to lower the debt, which in turn can also lower the interest rates.
Mhm.
Also, the debt is what gives you the ability for the government to fund different projects, right? So in order to fund more projects, the country goes into more debt. And now more debt now equals more interest rates, higher interest rates. So for the average person, what it's going to affect? It's going to affect interest rates. It's also going to affect any types of like subsidies that people get from the government, any type of programs. And this can be from things like nursing homes, to your local boys and girls club, to hospital funding. Like all of these things are affected by the national debt. I think like I said, for the average person is going to be interest rates. And that's interest rates on everything. And it's going to be any federal programs. That's what's going to be affected by the debt. But it can get complicated because it's things like the housing market doesn't really it doesn't really affect you until you have to buy a house, or it doesn't affect you till you have to move. And now, because of interest rates, now properties are increasing how much they're going to charge for rent and things of that nature. So it's something that people don't really think much about, but it definitely affects you. So yeah, we're gonna be going even more into debt, which means that interest rates are gonna go up. So if you're buying a house, prepare to spend more money.
Good luck.
Yeah. They're gonna be making some cuts to Medicaid, which I think is probably the most interesting kind of part of this bill. The cuts to Medicaid is probably gonna put somewhere like about 16 million people in jeopardy of losing their Medicaid benefits.
Yeah.
And they are creating these stipulations on who can actually continue to receive these benefits.
Yeah.
Right. And there's this notion that people are just twiddling their thumbs just to get medical benefit. That people aren't working, aren't being productive just to get medical benefits. If people aren't working, aren't being productive, it's probably not just so they can get free healthcare. I mean, that's probably not what it is. However, because of this, it is estimated that about 16 million people will be without health insurance, which I don't really know how that's going to affect hospitals, because hospitals still have to service you. There's a law called EMTALA that if anybody comes into an emergency department, that the hospital has to treat them. Hospital has to triage them. Doesn't matter if they have insurance or not. Doesn't matter if they are a citizen or undocumented. The hospital still has to treat them. A person can't die in a hospital lobby, right? And the hospital can't refuse whether or not you have health insurance. So, but what happens is the more people that don't have health insurance, now the hospital has to fit that bill.
Yeah.
Which now is going to be higher premiums, because somebody got paid for it, right? So now it's going to be higher premiums. It's going to be higher co-pays, because the less people that has health insurance, the less that they pay into the overall market.
Yes.
So I don't even understand how that's going to even work, because people are still going to
lead to a bunch of hospitals and facilities closing.
Absolutely, because I mean, you can't keep a hospital open if if you can't realistically service the people.
Yeah.
Right? You can't realistically service the people.
I mean, just thinking about Philly, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if Temple Hospital closes.
Yeah. I mean, and probably, I would say probably maybe, maybe Einstein. And the reason why I say not Temple, because Temple has a connection with the university.
Oh, with the university.
So
okay.
The university,
that makes sense.
their endowment can probably keep them
that's true.
afloat.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, but the other hospitals that do not have, are not attached to universities, I mean, it's going to be difficult for them to, for them to remain open. And we see, in our lifetime, we've seen hospitals come and go. We've seen health systems come and go. I mean, Tenet is probably the example of, they had Graduate Hospital in South Philly that's gone. You got Hanneman, Center City, that's gone. So it's not unrealistic that hospitals can disappear.
Yeah, no,
and that's what's going to happen, which is going to even more tax the other hospitals. So, the last thing about the last kind of, well, not the last, but another like kind of this bill is that they're going to be removing SNAP benefits.
Oh wait, before you get to that, back to the Medicaid part. I saw that one of the stipulations for qualification is the 80 hours a month per month of work for what is this for? Like, what?
So there is this idea that there are an abundance of able-bodied people who just are not working. And in order for them now to get any of these benefits, they're going to be required to work, or volunteer or something of that sort. I think that it is an attack on, on poor people, on sick people, on the least of us. It's an attack on them. And if you're telling me that I can stay on Medicaid if I can produce some type of volunteer work or whatever, then this is not real. Like, because that's not what you would call like overly productive, right?
Right.
Like, and could you simply say I volunteered at my church? Right? Like, and who's going to be checking? Like, it just seems too, like, just too kind of ridiculous. Like, who's going to be checking if somebody be coming in to make sure that you are volunteering properly? Like, it seems like it's just there to attack people. It's just there to inconvenience people.
Exactly.
Right, that's all it is. It's just there to inconvenience people. But I don't see how it benefits us, by like forcing people to
go to work.
Yeah. And I mean, let's be honest. I think that more people would be going to work if we had something like a living wage, like a competitive, realistic wages in this country. The minimum wage has not went up in 30 years.
Yeah. I think it's so insane. I'm sorry. I just think it's so insane that they're requiring people to go back to work and work 80 hours a month. And I know they did the math on what that looks like in terms of tax money they can get from those people that they're forcing to go back to work, so that the tax breaks for the ultra wealthy makes sense.
So I have even a more cynical kind of idea that I believe is happening. I believe that the push towards getting rid of undocumented immigrants is geared towards making these Americans who, don't really have any prospect of a good job to have to go work in a field somewhere, to have to go pick strawberries somewhere. And that is how they're going to attempt to replace the workforce that the migrants and the immigrants are doing now. So to replace American workers with with the migrant workers, I think that is the cynical plot and plan. And those workers, they aren't making any money. So you have to assume that even if you put American workers in there, they're not going to be making any money because you're probably not even going to be able to keep those industries profitable if you go from making, I don't know, say $10 an hour to now $20 an hour. Is your industry going to be able to absorb that type of hit? Or will it become too expensive to produce these products? And now you're losing the product, and now you're losing the job. So, I mean, I think they want to replace American workers with the migrant workers that they're pushing out of the country. That's what I believe is the ultimate, and Trump has said it, when he said things like, black jobs and shit like that. That's what they want us to do.
Well, how's that going to work? How is that going to work with so much of the big, beautiful bill, quote unquote, being aimed at getting migrants out of the country? Like, we talking billions of dollars being invested in getting people out of the country and a detention center and a wall. Like, how is like?
I don't think it can. I mean, and even right now, I think that there is a surplus of jobs in the country, like 5 million open jobs in the country. So
really? Okay.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. If you remove a population base of, even if the estimates are 10 million people, right? Who's going to fill those jobs in those industries at those wages?
At those wages, yeah.
It doesn't seem sustainable.
No.
Which means that these, this whole thing about this 80 hours, now that might make it a little more, it'll make it so people may be forced to work in these jobs for low wages so they can maintain their health insurance. You see what I'm saying?
And be taxed while I just can't get over the fact that these people are going to be taxed while the ultra wealthy are going to get some ridiculous tax breaks.
Yeah.
I know you were about to go to the SNAP benefits. I did see our governor, Josh Shapiro, say that it's on the table to just completely end SNAP benefits in PA. I saw him say that. Did you see that?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So, what was the thinking behind that? Or what were you going to say about the SNAP benefits?
Yeah. I was the thing I was going to say about the SNAP benefits, and I wasn't really going to get too far into it, but
okay.
I feel like, and this is a personal thing, right? There has been welfare reform since I was a little kid, right? You had you had Clinton, you had Bush. Everybody wanted to do welfare reform. So much reform can you do to welfare at this point? I mean, at this point, it is literally scraps, right? It's literally scraps that you are taking away from people that obviously need it. There are already a million stipulations on getting SNAP, right? It's already like, I can't walk in there. You can't walk in there. Like, there's already a million stipulations on getting these types of benefits, so you are really making a conscious effort to harm the people who need it the most. Like I said, it's been welfare reform since I was a kid. It's the 80s they've been reforming welfare. How much more can you cut from welfare? Like, they're not getting that much money, so it just seems like ridiculous that we're talking about SNAP benefits. So that is food. We see how ridiculous that sounds. We're talking about food from people who clearly need it. And there's clearly a process to filter out people that don't need it. Right? So the people that need it, you're snatching that away for what? What is the reason besides to be cruel? Like, besides to be cruel, that's the only thing that you can, because like I said, how much more can you take away from wealth?
Yeah, the way what you were just saying prior to this was, people aren't really getting paid living wages as is. Everyone fucking needs it. It's going to be anarchy in the streets. Like, no one's going to look at their family in the face and not be able to feed them. It's going to be anarchy in the markets. Like, what do you expect is going to happen?
Yeah, and we talk about some of the things that Trump promised, right? Promised to lower prices.
Yeah,
I was removing somebody's food stamps, essentially lowering prices for them. Like, it's actually kind of crazy. It's actually kind of crazy. So that's all I got. I mean, I can go on and on and on because it's a big bill. It's a whole lot of
bills all over the place. It's crazy, but we could have actually did the whole 2 hours on this bill, honestly. Because I did have a question. I do want to ask you this before, because this confused me overnight into today. I saw last night. Okay, they didn't have the votes, and then today they had the votes. How many times do they do the fucking vote?
So they are actually supposed to do the vote one time. However, the speaker can choose to keep the vote open. So the vote doesn't really become official until the speaker closes the vote. So they just use that as an opportunity to keep the vote open as long as possible, while they put pressure on the holdouts to get their yes vote. But what I think is even more kind of damning is so many of the Republicans, I mean, all of the Democrats talked about how bad the bill was, right?
Right.
But you had quite a few Republicans that talked about how bad the bill was also. But the biggest prominent Republican, which is Elon Musk, he totally just trashed the bill, continues to trash the bill, and say how terrible it is. Now, what I think is interesting, and this is where like Republicans kind of speak out of both sides of their mouth. A lot of the Republican leadership is saying that Elon doesn't know what he's talking about, right? He doesn't understand the bill. He's misguided, or he has his own reasons, right? However, this is the same person that you put in charge of a department that slash government jobs, that slash funding. So you're telling me that he cannot comprehend, or he has his own interests with this bill? But previously, last month, you had all the confidence in what he was doing. So it makes you kind of realize and understand that they are going to say and do whatever they need done at that moment. Because if Elon don't know what the fuck he's doing now, how do you know what the fuck he was doing 2 months ago, 3 months ago?
Right.
He was in the government.
Yeah, he was.
He's in a position
going
where
crazy.
Right, Doge was going crazy. So you saying that Doge, when he was cutting everything, like Elon's the smartest man on the planet. He's Tony Stark, so whatever the hell y'all trying to make him out to be, and he's so smart and he knows what he's doing. But now, because he opposes this bill, he don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Right, and he got to go back to Africa apparently.
Got to go back to Africa. That's nasty.
Crazy.
That's nasty work. That is nasty work.
Man, we appreciate that. That was a great breakdown on the political perspective. Like I said, we could have did the whole 2 hours on the political perspective and everything that's happening there.
Thank you for watching this video. Please remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.